Vancouver is known for being one of the world's most livable cities and among its most expensive. And while much is made of its natural surroundings, it can be a very walkable city as well. And what better way to get to know the city than on foot? That is the thinking behind a new book. Here to talk about A Perfect Day for a Walk, the history, cultures, and communities of Vancouver on foot is author Bill Arnott. Your previous works include the Gone Viking travelogues as well as a book about Vancouver Island, and I believe you have another one on the way about the Okanagan. So, what inspired this book?
So yeah, talking today about A Perfect Day for a Walk, the history, cultures, and communities of Vancouver on foot. That's the latest. I'm delighted that we've got a BC bestseller with this one as well. So thanks to the team at Arsenal Pulp Press here in Vancouver. As you had said, with those Gone Viking travelogues, I've been privileged, like so many of us over a lot of years, to travel rather grand global expeditions. And I really wanted to remind folks that we can have a great expedition, a micro excursion where we live, where we work, where we commute. There's so much to see and experience right here underfoot. I live on Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh land, and the unique flora, fauna, art installations, culture, and as I say, layers and layers of history underfoot. We can experience these things cheaply, simply, easily, minimizing a carbon footprint. It's all here on offer if we're open to it.
A Perfect Day for a Walk details a series of strolls through Kitsilano, Granville Island, False Creek, the West End, Cole Harbour, Yaletown, Gastown, Chinatown, the downtown east side, among others. How did you come up with these particular walks?
Well, there was a bit of simplicity with respect to logistics. My wife and I live more or less on the west side in Kitsilano. So I really wanted to, if I can say, stay on brand and ensure that I was walking to all of these destinations. So I did tie in some historical links traditionally from a settler perspective, what folks would consider the quote unquote birthplace of a modern day Vancouver. What was Gastown? What was Granville for a while, was more or less west of our current Main Street, more or less north of West 16th Avenue, and then I kept things south of Burrard Inlet. So very much in that sort of crescent shape around the water.
And what do we mean when we say we tend towards home?
Well, there's a quote that I loved, and there's a circularity to it. There's the quotes about travels, their arrivals are departures, departures are arrivals. And wherever we're going, aren't we just trying to replicate a little sense of home or that sense of belonging wherever we are? So, irrespective of having a suitcase or a pack, that to me is sort of a romantic nature. And even if we're just heading out to work, perhaps it's invariably to make our way home again. And I feel the same way with our recreational walks.
Now, exploration and discovery, as you put in the book, can lead to more questions. When we're out there walking about the city, what kind of questions should we be asking?
Well, one of the things I've experienced, and you know this, John, and most of us know this, you come back perhaps from a vacation, we think, wow, there's so many wonderful, interesting things on offer there. But of course, that's just a state of mind. So part of my creating a perfect day for a walk was maybe an incentive, almost a challenge for us to open our minds up to that sense of wonder anytime, wherever we are. And that to me is that questioning, not being afraid to perhaps strike up conversation with folks that we meet. Folks have enjoyed the book, whether they're locals or travelers. And again, there's that, as I say, that dotted line between traveling and being a traveler and just having that open-mindedness and a desire to just question big picture, where we are, why we're here. And invariably, you'll learn and meet some interesting people and get a story or two out of it as well.
I like these four that you posed. What exactly am I seeing out there? Who made it like this? Why is it this way? And I think most importantly, what will it be like tomorrow? Is does that inform a lot of your walks? This idea that there's this impermanence to, especially a place like Vancouver, which seems to tear itself down and renew itself constantly.
You're right. This is a perfect example of this city, even in the span of creating, shaping, sharing a perfect day for a walk, was essentially a half year of dedicated walking and exploring around these different Vancouver neighborhoods. the profile of the city changed radically week by week. And what I liked is not just talking about necessarily new builds or digging a new, trench for a subway, that sort of a thing, but also just nature, the cyclicality of it, the flora and the fauna. Coming and changing and that turnover as well. And I suppose from that we can always draw a little bit of a prescient nature towards it, where we're heading, and perhaps then challenging ourselves and how might I affect that perhaps in a more positive way.
Now, I keep coming back to quotes, but there's another great one in the book that you cite. If you want to understand the soul of the city, look at the economic reasons for its founding. And we see that with a place like False Creek, which was very industrial at one time, and now it's very residential. What other examples do you think there are of this in the book?
Well, that in particular was a neat example because, of course, I learned and read of that while I was traveling elsewhere outside of my city, which, of course, as I say, we can reapply that wherever we are. Um, I loved, as I say, visiting with indigenous locals as well as travelers, as well as long-term locals. And again, always asking, getting outside of one's own head and learning what other perspectives are, and then that helping, as I say, to shape our own new perspectives with respect to where we are. Things that we so easily overlook when we're coming and going to and from work, and whether we're doing shopping or going to a show, all of these things, just taking a moment perhaps and being a little bit less of a rush. And oh, maybe what is that? What is that tree? What is that bird? And it can enrich our daily experience immeasurably.
Now, this isn't your typical guidebook. I see you put a lot of yourself in there as well. In particular, the time you talked about you talked a man rather, out of jumping from the Canby Bridge. What happened there?
Well, that was still sort of residual pandemic days. So I was out for a very early morning jog, as many of us were doing, trying to stay active and yet socially distance, that sort of a thing. And yeah, I happened to be coming back across Canby Street Bridge. So as a local, and someone is contemplating jumping there, my first thought was honestly, oh, friend, you're just going to hurt yourself if you, I don't think you, I don't know. And yet there was no one there. This didn't strike me as a cry for help. None of us are really equipped, or pardon me, very few of us are equipped to deal with such a situation. So I did what any of us would do and just basically listened to this poor individual who was having a challenge that we can all experience, perhaps at times, that sense of despair and loneliness, and perhaps just having another ear there, someone who genuinely cared. That seemed to make a difference, and that one ended, I felt, in a very positive manner, and I do hope that individual remains all right to this day. Things that we see and aren't necessarily looking for when we're walking around town.
I also like how you bring in different voices, experts, almost like they're joining us on the walk. Two that come to mind right off the bat are Terry David Mulligan, the radio and TV personality, for his thoughts about Kitsilano and West Fourth during the hippie days, and then Evelyn Lau, formerly Vancouver's poet laureate, while walking through Yaletown. How important was it for you to include voices like these in addition to your own in the book?
Well, from a selfish perspective, I'm going to be learning all the time by, as you know, we're learning by asking rather than speaking. And I thought, what a neat opportunity to visit with people that I've admired artistically, creatively. They've had influences on me, and what a neat opportunity to just spend time with these individuals that now are our friends. And that I also just happened to think of some of these individuals linked to these Vancouver neighborhoods and elements of the city's history, which I liked. And you mentioned this before, John. I wrote A Perfect Day for a Walk, not to be a guidebook as such. Yes, there's maps in there, a blend of photos, some contemporary that I've taken, as well as some archival photos for a now and then perspective. But folks that have been reading it, not only gleaning like me from these visits with experts like Evelyn Lau, like Terry David Mulligan, like city archivists and Michael Kluckner and John Aiken and others. Some folks have been treating this as a bit of a loosely based guidebook. Others just enjoying it as armchair escape. And then fun ones, folks also wanting perhaps to replicate some of those walks, or as I said, to treat it as an incentive or a challenge to just perhaps get out there as easily based on your ambulatory, accessibility and all that good stuff.
Um, I want to ask you a question in terms of what do you hope people get out of the book? But first, I'll read you something from the conclusion where you say, I've read too many accounts of people needing to go on a trip to search, pursue, or heal justification for simply doing what appeals. But many of us do need a reason to venture into the world, an excuse to wander, discover, and play. It's my hope that A Perfect Day for a Walk might alleviate that, providing encouragement or even a slice of permission. Why do some people need permission?
Oh, I don't know why, John. I think many of us tend to feel, well, I've got to get to that first, or that's a priority, rather than realizing, my goodness, getting out of doors is nurturing, it's healing, it's sharing, it's learning. Um, I think for many of us, it's just easier to watch something streaming on a device than lacing up shoes and going out the front door. And not every day is going to be perhaps the ideal weather. And that was also my way of saying, you know what, irrespective of the climate, the conditions, rain, snow, as we experience here, windstorms, it's always a perfect day for a walk.
The name of the book is A Perfect Day for a Walk, The History, Cultures, and Communities of Vancouver. It's available from Arsenal Pulp Press. My thanks to author Bill Arnott.
Thank you, John.